Hello, welcome. Just gotta move some stuff. Okay. Get myself organized. Okay. So we're doing under the oak, and this is actually really easy, perfect for beginners. So you can use any size canvas. You can use 11 by 14, 8 by 10, something bigger if you want to use something bigger or smaller. I have white and black because that's what we're mostly using. And then we're going to use any colors you want for the flowers. You can use blue, red. You can have pre-mixed orange if you want pre-mixed orange in the mix. So see, pre-mixed orange. You can just make an orange with some yellow and red. You can have fun with that. You can pause, take your time throughout this video. So I'm going to use an 8 by 10 canvas today. Yeah. And for brushes, I like to use my large flat brush here. You can also just use a round one if you want. And I'm using a medium flat bright brush, number 4, or you can use something smaller or bigger. And I have a couple detail brushes. This is good for some of the branches. So number 2 and number 0. And for the flowers, even for a bit of grass. All right, so let's get started. So first of all, we're going to start with our large one. I feel like a lot of people have this type of a brush. So we're going to stick that in the water. And I actually start a lot of the background stuff. So I just do some grayish colors up here, keep it lighter in towards the bottom of just below the middle. So see how about the middle and below kind of swoops and gets lighter into a field. So you need to have some contrast. That means I like to reuse my plate, so this is all dry. I'm going to pull some white to the side, a nice scoop of white, and then I'm going to take a little bit of black at a time. Just a little bit of black, just like a little dot, and you get a very light gray. So this is a good place to start. We're not going to start down here. We're actually going to start up here, see how it looks, see how dark it really is or how light it really is. Just a touch of water. See how I'm just kind of flicking my brush, dabbing and flicking, and just doing some random little bunches of gray. And this is going to represent the texture of the leaves in the tree. It also gives it like a cloudy look. It's kind of cool. So a little touch of water. And you can just take a nice scoop of white if you went too dark. I don't really need to do it because I went already really light. But if this is what I call a little filler, if you want to just go a little bit lighter in between. So it kind of looks clouded already. But let's just take a little bit more and let's take a touch more black. So another little dot. It's still kind of light. We're not going to go too dark too quick, but it already looks a bit darker. And I like to start at the top corner and just go and fill in some sections. Don't fill it all in. Just leave some little gaps, but they're kind of really bunched together. See, they're not too spaced out. It's not like polka dots. You can use the corner of your brush and lightly tap, tap, tap. And go about halfway down. And this is where I like to just take white after you use up most of your paint and just kind of fill in between, just so that you still have lots of texture, different shades of gray. And just kind kind of carry that down a little bit into the open area. So it's mostly just white down here. Okay, so once you have that, then we're just going to do a little bit of the section down here where it's getting into the field and into the grassy part where the tree is going to sit. So this is smaller than this canvas, of course, but so it's not going to be, we're not going to take up a lot of space here. We're going to go a little bit lower down. Everything's going to be a bit more condensed. So with the medium, I like to use the medium, a little touch of water. And I want to start with this sort of silhouette background foresty look of trees. That's what I'm going to start with, and I'm going to just blend it out, make it a little bit lighter. So we're going to take into our same light gray. You're just going to take a little dunk in your black. So now you're just going to add that, and it's going to get dark gray. So a nice dark gray into the same spot. Okay, so since it's there, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to go lower. So this seems like a good spot. And I'm just going to just kind of use the thin side. And do the same types of little things, little flicks. You can just do light little touches for some distant looking grassy stuff. But my trick, what I like to do, get a little bit of that going. Then wash this off completely. So I wash it off. Wash it off, dab it dry. So clean, more dry brush, and then we're going to just take some white. And with the white, we're just going to kind of pull that down a little bit. We're just going to go into that, pull it down a little bit. And we're just going to wash this off again. Clean it off. And I like to just take the top with my clean, kind of damp brush, see, and just pick up the extra top part so it kind of gives it a blurry look, which I also put some white on top later. See, it just kind of picks up the paint, gives it a blurry look, gives it a watery look, watercolor look. Bring it up a bit closer. Dry it off. So if you know, it really depends on what you like. If you like that look, I think it's kind of cool. And you can also instead just take a little bit of white when it's a bit more dry. So you don't need to do it right away, but you can just go and from the top down, you can tone it down. As soon as you touch too much black, just wipe it off, take a bit more white again, and do it again. So it just, again, makes it more blurry looking, softens it up. You can play around with the paint, move the paint around, make the different shapes for your shrubbery trees in the background if you want them more straight up, if you like the different angles it goes, so kind of this way and that way. Little dabs instead. So it's kind of fun. Okay, and below that, I do want to bring the white upwards. So I just have it lighter underneath that area before we get into our grassy little area. So I like to just take white here. It's just black and white, right? So you're just only going to get different shades of gray. The more white you take, should be lighter, as long as you don't have a bunch of black on your brush. And you can just kind of lightly flick it one way to give it more of a meadow, breezy look. You can just do little flicks. You can flick it up. You can use the thin side in one direction. You can go both directions unless you like it looking like it's blowing one way. And I'll just take that to the bottom. So it picks up whatever wet gray you have. It usually picks up a bit of gray, and it already looks a bit gray. So that's kind of what, it's just a light gray. And at this point, you can go back to the top of your canvas and add in some darker spots, right? Because there's some darker spots. It's really light, unless you, I don't know, unless you're really liking the cloudy look here. But you can take the same darker gray, same stuff that we use down here, and just add, you can use this brush, you can use the bigger brush, depending on, you know, what you're comfortable with. But I like to just, I don't want to put them in white spots. I like to put them in already darker spots, but also it's nice to have more darkness from the tree hitting the top of the canvas. So take some of that and into, see this area? It's a little bit darker. As it gets away, it goes lighter. I'm going to use my flat, large brush again. Just wipe that off. Use the flat side, lightly tap and do some almost like commas. And just start over here and work your way out a little bit. So when you get a little bit less paint, it doesn't come off as dark, as you can see, which is good. Just light little taps here. You don't need to go too crazy. And you can even just take a little bit of straight black, as long as it doesn't look straight black on your canvas, because you want straight black to be for the tree. You can just take a little bit extra black in your dark gray, or just more straight black if it's got a lot of wet white paint. You'll just make it a light gray again to deepen up certain spots. And just play around with it until you're happy with, you know, some of the contrast that you've created. And a good little tip is actually your finger can do a really good job cleaning up some of the edges here. So if you think that it looks a little too uniform, just use your finger to smooth things out along the edges, because the paint's still a bit wet. You can just give it more of a rounded look or a softer look. See the difference already. You just go in here, just move the paint around, soften the look. I'm going to add a little bit more darkness here for the sake of some darker contrast. And see how there's little pockets of there's still some white pockets, like the light shining through here and there. If you need to, you can actually add it in. I recommend when it's dry, more dry, but you can take any of your large or medium brush, just take a little scoop of plain white, and you just kind of put in a couple little streaks here into where it's already lighter. The more you go into it when it's wet, the more it just goes back to the color it was before, which is a gray. If it touches any black, it just starts turning gray. You can just use your finger to calm down some of the streaks if needed. Just a little bit of white, just a couple little streaks of commas. And the more I go over this, the more it's going to turn back to gray. And that's how you get more of that nice contrast and pockets of white, of the light shining through. It's nice. Okay, and once you're done playing around with that, that's it. We work on the grass for a little bit before we start working on the tree because we just want that to dry for a little bit before we start putting in the tree details, which is a nice little gnarly look. So we go back to our medium brush. You can clean it, wash it off, dry it. Okay, so into the grass. You can take straight black. And you can start down here. I start a little bit lower. See? Just kind of flick it upwards. You can go different directions or you don't have to. You can just go in one direction. Just kind of flick it upwards. See, I'm just pressing, flicking it upwards. Just a little bit of black, just kind of sparsely doing it right now. And I like to couple that with, and you can use a fan brush. If you have a fan brush, and it kind of does a really good job. You can use some lighter grays or darker grays. See, you can just get a bunch at a time. Lots of layerings. And that was just a few little streaks, right? And it looks like a bunch of grass. But otherwise, you can use the thin side and just kind of flick it up, but you have to do lots of overlap. So when I do this, I have to do lots of overlap. Make sure that you don't just see all the strands. You want to make it look like there's a whole meadow going on. And once you're done with your grass, try not to touch it. Try not to play around too much with that. You can even touch up onto this background one if you want it to be a little bit darker. This is just a fan brush. I'm not really sure why I'm still using it, but I do like the texture it brings. Just by quickly putting in a couple streaks, it kind of does a lot. Okay, this is just black, a couple little streaks. And you got a lot of wild looking grass. Hello, Vicky. Welcome in. Now we just have to worry about making the tree. Hopefully pretty laid back, not complicated, hopefully easy. I know trees are not easy to make, but I like making trees and I think I have a good technique for them. Let's start with the medium brush first, and then we're going to switch to the number 2. I'm just going to use straight black. So if it comes off and it's not pure black at first, you can just do a second coat when it's more dry, and then it will be really dark, which is what you want. You want the tree to be the darkest point, and you don't want just straight black into the top here. When I plant this, I'm going to plant this like right over here. I see how it kind of goes out a little bit on an angle. I'm just going to do something like that. Just something, and the gnarly look is more, shapy and bendy because it's got a lot of character. So I'm just going to roughly, very roughly, give it some direction. I know that I want it to go up and out like that. So I have a pretty basic shape. See, it just starts from the top of the grass, not on the very edge, but, close to it. Kind of goes out a bit, bends back a little, but we're not doing like, it's not too over exaggerated, but it does look like, if you look at it, the side kind of has like a mountain shape. Okay. And then we're going to plant the other side. So the other side, just think about the bumpiness of a gnarly tree. And an oak tree, it's got some nice thickness down here, got a lot of character and shapes and bumpiness. It's not like perfectly smooth. It's got ridges, and it makes it look a bit more realistic. It's kind of nice. Just nice and bumpy. And you're just making the trunk and the rest of this a little bit thicker because it has to be. And it gets a little bit thinner as it goes up, right? So we're just going to, and plus it's getting further away from us, so it's going to look thinner too. You can even have a little twig kind of sticking out, like it just cracked off. I'm just using more of the thin side. Still, I'm not using it flat. I'm just kind of wiggling my brush a little bit to get the edges a bit imperfect, and that's what I was going for. Okay, so I'm going to show you with my number 2 brush. Let's go a bit closer. Deep black. So as we get up here, you can just have, like a little branch. Just, it doesn't have to be just sticking outwards. It can have a bit more of a bend to it. This can come out. It can just go up and just do some different directions type of thing. Follow it. It just does something different, not just a straight line. But for the most part, I didn't just do that for my branches. As you can tell, it's kind of like a bit of an impressionist style and kind of abstract. So there's some gaps to make it look like there's some leaves covering some of the branches, and it's so far away, like you only see bits and pieces of the branches. So this is further away from us. So from here, maybe I'll just have like, a little thin line kind of squiggling away. So it starts off thicker here, and then it just goes a little bit thinner further away to make it look like it's further away that way. Right? And you can have, now another thing is sometimes the black might be a bit too much for people, so you can just go to a lighter gray. So if I just go to a lighter gray, it doesn't have to be as dark. Just a little bit of a lighter gray. Doesn't have to be as dark, but and don't be afraid to also kind of almost intertwine a little bit, so like an overlap. And up here, don't forget you have some stuff up here. Keep them a little bit thicker because it's still kind of more into the side where it's closer to us, part of the tree. And if you want to put some twigs in, you can just very lightly put in a couple twigs. You just use the thin side and a little flicks coming out. Yeah, this is just the light gray. I'm just kind of going over some of these a little bit just to give it doesn't have to be all black. It doesn't have to be exactly how I did mine. It's always supposed to be kind of a bit random, fun to put in. And you take your step back, see how it's looking. If you have enough kind of, I like to call it balanced. So it looks like you have some branches going this way. It's not all just going that way. It looks like you have stuff as if it would be going over this way too, which you want to put in. And after that, you can highlight a bit of the tree. So if you just take with your detail brush some white, plain white, and it's still wet, I know, but I find it's easier this way for some reason. I can just go right over top, and it makes it a little bit of like a grayish, different gray colors as I keep going. Just along the light's more this way, I feel. So just picking up a bit of that light and also adding a couple streaks into the tree. And you can also, since it's wet, blend it out. So some white. Doesn't have to be on the very edge of the tree. I'm just following up a couple of these branches, but not all of them. Just a few major, thicker ones. Like over here, not going to bother. More over on this side, I can give a little bit of a highlight. It creates a lot more texture. This is right after it's wet, which I find super easy to work with because you can easily get rid of it. You can put black over top, and it just makes it more streaky. But from far away, it adds that, you know, the different layers of the texture on the tree. And one thing I will say that you should probably do is just take your dark gray or some little bit of a light gray, so some white and some black. Just go back over the grass at the bottom, just below the tree. And then you can finish it off with any colored flowers, you know, so it's nice to add a bit of flowers in the mix of this. Kind of got like a Halloween vibe, definitely a mood, but when you put some flowers, it gives it a nice little brightness. So this, I mean, if I just take, you can take orange, you can take, so if you want to take some red and some blue to make purple, add in some white, whatever you want, pink. And what I like to do is I just like to put blobs. So I just kind of put a little blob here. And then over here, I like to get a little bit bigger. I just get a little bit bigger, more of a bigger blob. So it's kind of circular, more oval, I guess. You can also just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals if you want to put that instead. And there's little dots further away at the bottom, maybe a little bit bigger. Just like a little blob here. I have purple, or sorry, I have orange that if you want to just add like little dots into the mix for some color. Yeah, I just like to just a little bit extra texture and some color. It's kind of fun. But I do finish this off to make it look a bit more like a flower, very abstract, you know, with the theme, nothing too detailed because it's the way that it is. It's more of a softer look. I'm going to take a bit of black and just on the tip of the brush, just kind of poke in little black centers like that. You can even just make poppies too. Okay, and that should do it whenever you feel like you're done. Yes, someone was asking about blue. I did put a little bit of blue with the purple, so I mixed a bit of red and blue together with some white. As long as you add white to your colors, you can do yellow. I didn't put yellow flowers. I just took whatever colors I liked. I made purple. You can do pink. You can just do orange, yellow, really anything. And that's how I did that painting. A fun way to make a tree, hopefully not too, because, you know, when you're making trees, sometimes you have to be a bit more technical, but this was very free and loose. You can just do something gnarly and it's very forgiving. It's not like it has to be all perfectly connected. You can see I made it very imperfect, and I think it works. So if you're a beginner or if you're just having fun, doesn't matter. You can show off your paintings on our Facebook page under the support group. I'd like to see different variations. Maybe you took this in a different direction. You wanted to do other things with it because it's very simple. But hopefully it was fun overall. So thanks for joining me. And maybe I'll see you guys another time. We have lots on our YouTube channel that are currently up, and we have lots more coming up. You go to artistpaletteDurham.com. Lots of painting choices to choose from. Thanks for joining me tonight. This was one of our more easy paintings, and I hope you had fun. Have a good night or good day. Bye, guys.